Mandy discovers that Harris, a well-known figure in controversy, is now embroiled in one of the most significant scandals of his life. A woman has come forward and claimed to have been concealing a secret that could ruin everything, and that secret is a baby. Not just any baby, man. That is allegedly DC's child. The internet is in a state of complete shock, and Yandy Smith has been completely taken by surprise. And May's had a covered affair, and now she's prepared to come clean. However, things get even stranger when she claims to have receipts, screenshots, messages, and even a paternity test demand that could alter everything. Yandy, who has always been there for her man, is now confronted with a horrible reality. Is this the biggest betrayal of men? Is DC actually concealing a secret child from his? One thing is certain though, this drama is far from over, and by the time you hear everything, you won't believe how deep this scandal truly goes. It all started with a single Instagram post that contained a mysterious message that sent shockwaves through social media and left fans frantically searching for answers. It's time for the truth to come out. It was just a simple statement that said, "Can't run from this forever. The world deserves to know." There were no names or tags, but within minutes, fans flooded the comment section with theories about what she was talking about, who she was for, and what she was talking about. It didn't take long for clues to start to fall into place, and people searched through her profile for any clues, and when someone discovered an old photo of her at a love and hip-hop event, the pieces began to fit together. Within an hour, one name, M. Harris, began trending on various platforms, but initially, people dismissed it as just another attention seeker or clout chaser. However, things took a startling turn when the post's creator, Tasha Monroe, revealed something shocking that no one had anticipated. When she went live, the screen lit up, and she appeared as a young woman in her mid-20s with long, dark curls falling over her shoulders. Her eyes were dead serious, and she had her lips pressed together as she took a deep breath. The chat immediately exploded, asking, "Girl, what's the tea?" We were ready to spill it, and she looked absolutely insane. Tasha's fingers trembled as she held the phone and spoke. She started off a little shaky, saying, "I really did want to do this, but I had no choice but to comply. I was told to keep quiet, ignored, and dismissed, but I won't be silent any longer." The conversation was moving at breakneck speed when she revealed that Harris, the MC, is the father of my child. Social media went into overdrive, with Twitter exploding and screenshots from the live stream spreading like wildfire on blogs. Within minutes, #Mendeecees was trending because everyone was talking about it on gossip pages and major entertainment news sites. However, Tasha wasn't finished. She leaned closer to the camera and spoke in a slightly tremulous voice. "I know what people will say. She's lying to get attention and is making it up. I understand that, but I have proof, and I'm prepared to show it." As anticipated, she displayed a picture of a baby boy. "This is my son," she said in an emotional voice, and MVs, "This is your son." Comments poured in on the internet saying, "Oh hell no, why does she want to lose her mind? I need to see a DNA test before I believe this." Tasha's hands were shaking as she went on. "I kept this to myself for too long," she whispered. The conversation resumed, but the real question was, did Yandy know? Meanwhile, at the Harris home, it was late at night when Yandy's phone began to buzz uncontrollably. At first, she ignored it. "I thought he would do the right thing, and I thought he would be a man. But he vanished, blocked me, and pretended that I didn't exist. Like our baby didn't exist." She thought it was just another random notification, but when her best friends began texting her with the same question, she felt sick to her stomach. "Girl, did you see what's happening on mine? Tell me this isn't true." Yandy said, "Check Instagram." Her hand trembled as she unlocked her phone, and her heart fell when she saw Tasha's face on her screen. She clicked on the live, but it was already over. Instead, she saw hundreds and thousands of reposts, clips, and screenshots, and then she saw the picture of the baby, the child who, in Tasha's opinion, belonged to Mendeecees Yandy. Her world began to fall apart, and she sat frozen for what seemed like an eternity. After everything they had been through, her hands clenched into big fists, anger, bewilderment, and betrayal. She turned slowly, her heart thumping in her chest, and she met Mendeecees' gaze as he was sitting on the couch, looking through his own phone. His face was tense, and his jaw was clenched. He knew that Mendeecees saw Yandy's voice, which was dangerously calm. He looked up at her, his face blank, and his eyes were wet. They said everything for the first time. As Yandy's hands trembled and she gripped the phone tighter, her nails digging into the case, she felt her breath quicken and her heart hammering against her chest. She had endured too much with Mendeecees, supporting him during his prison sentence, defending him against the world, and starting a family with him, and now this is yet another betrayal and secret mindedness. Yandy wasn't hearing him when he said, "Don't believe everything you see online." She jumped up from the couch, her hands shaking, and paced the living room. "Don't believe everything I see online," she said, laughing bitterly and throwing her arms in the air. "So what exactly am I supposed to believe, that this woman just woke up and decided to output your? I don't even know this girl like that." "But you do know her," Yandy interrupted him with a voice full of rage and incredulity, "because 2 minutes ago, you were acting like this came out of nowhere." MC exhaled sharply. "Yeah, I met her years ago, but I swear to God I never." Yandy's head snapped toward him, her eyes. Before Ems could react, Yandy was already grabbing her phone and scrolling through the mess of DMs she had been inundated with. Then she discovered a message from Tasha Monroe herself, saying, "Hi, if you want the truth, Yandy's, don't lie to me right now. Mendeecees." She stopped herself, shaking her head, and said, "I need to hear this from you." The phone rang twice before a voice said, Well, I was wondering when you called." Yan's breath hitched. Tasha's voice was smooth, almost taunting. "You got 1 minute to think." Her fingers hovered over the number for a moment as her mind cried out for her to stop and think and process, but her emotions were in control now. "Explain yourself." Yandy snapped, and Tasha gently laughed. "Oh, sweetheart, trust me, you're going to need more than a minute for this." Yandy gritted her teeth and said, "Just tell me the truth." There was a pause, and then Tasha's voice changed to a softer, almost dejected tone. "I never wanted it to come out like this," she said, adding emphasis on the fact that you're a husband. "You expect me to think that you don't have to cash a shot back, but I have receipts, texts, and pictures, and if you're really quiet, I might even have a few recordings of Yandy." She closed her eyes for a moment and took a sharp breath. Her husband, as if it were physically painful for her to say, left me with no choice. Eyes snapped open. "Excuse me." Tasha hummed, "Oh yeah, baby. You think I didn't keep evidence? You think I didn't record certain conversations? You and your man may be accustomed to reality TV, but I don't believe you," she whispered. "So pass aside, all right. Then I guess you won't mind if I drop a little something extra." Yandy's stomach dropped. Yandy's blood ran cold on my Instagram in about 5 minutes. She turned to face me, her face a mix of panic and rage. What the hell is she talking about? DC looked stunned for a moment, and then his phone began buzzing wildly. "Oh baby, it's already happening," he said, smiling through the phone. "You might want to check your timeline," Yandy said, pulling her phone away. The attached screenshot was a message thread that appeared to have been between her and M, and immediately beneath it was a voice recording of Yandy's entire body stiffened. She was shaking violently from her ear as she reloaded her Instagram feed and saw a new post from Tasha with the caption, "I had receipts, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, #exposed." Reaching for her phone, Yandy, her face gaunt, said, "Don't press play," but it was too late. Her finger hovered for a half second before tapping the screen, and then there was a crackle, followed by a voice. M's voice said, "Listen, I can't do this right now. I told you I wasn't trying to mess up what I had. You got to stop calling me silence." Tasha's voice was softly shaking, almost heartbroken. "So what you?" Yandy's world fell apart. Her hands went numb, and her phone almost slipped out of her hands. She turned slowly and painfully to look at Ems, who was frozen in place, his face a mask of regret and guilt. Just pretending that our son doesn't exist. There was another silence, followed by a deep sigh from Mrs. I'll send you something next week. Just keep this between us. Her voice was barely audible as she whispered, and I opened my mouth to make an excuse, but Yandy's hand shot up, saying, "Don't say a damn word." Before she knew what she was doing, she grabbed her keys and left the house, leaving Mendy to stop staring after her, his whole world collapsing around him. Yandy's hands were still shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. She was so overcome with shock, anger, and devastation that she could hardly see the road ahead. The voice recording kept playing in her head over and over again. "I'll send you something next week, but please keep this between us." She lied, looked her in the eyes, and told her that this woman was making this up. Now, this recording of him essentially confessing to something shady, possibly even feigning a child behind her back, which she even answers. Now, Yandy didn't even know where she was driving until she pulled into a parking lot and turned off the engine. Her phone buzzed, and she ignored all of the nonstop calls from Mendeecees texts from Friends fans that flooded her notifications after that dreadful post went viral. She went through her contacts instead, found Tasha's number, and hit call. It rang twice, and then, "Well, Dan," Tasha answered quickly. Her voice was full of laughter as she said, "I need to see you." And then there was a pause, followed by a low laugh. "Oh, so now you want to talk? I don't have time for games," Tasha Yandy snapped. Pause, then meet me at Sullivan's Cafe in an hour. Just so we're clear, I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to show you the truth. Yandy hung up the phone without saying anything more. An hour later, she found herself entering a dimly lit cafe with her heart racing. She saw Tasha sitting close to the window, wearing huge sunglasses as if she were a famous person. When Yandy came up to Tasha, she slowly took off her shades, revealing a smirk. "I didn't think you'd actually show." Yandy pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, folding her arms. "I don't have time for small talk, so show me what you have." Tasha raised an eyebrow and got right to the point. "Okay." Then she reached into her bag and took out a manila folder. Yandy's stomach twisted as Tasha slid it across. She reluctantly picked up the table and flipped it open, and then she gasped when she saw printed text messages, more recordings on a USB drive, and pictures of me with Tasha Hing and a baby Yandy. "I know it's a lot," she said, observing Yandy's reaction, "but I told you I don't lie, you." Yandy clenched her jaw and gripped the edge of the table so tightly that her fingers turned white. Tasha laughed briefly and said, "Oh girl, we did a DNA test. I got the paperwork right here. He's been playing both sides, and guess what? That's his son." Yandy reached back into her bag and took out another. Yandy's vision blurred as she read the results, which showed that M was the father 99% of the time. She felt as though the air had been forced out of the room, and she thought she might actually faint for a moment. This wasn't just a rumor, not just gossip on social media. This was real. Tasha leaned forward, and her voice grew softer, and now I didn't want to be the one to ruin it. "Your family, Yandy, but I wasn't going to allow my son to grow up as someone else's dirty little secret because he deserves better." Yandy was hardly paying attention, and her mind was running through all of the conversations she had ever had with Mendeecees, including the times he had vowed to be a different person and the times he had assured her that they would never have any more secrets, and throughout the entire time, he had a very different. Children's hands clenched into fists as a storm of emotions raged inside her, causing pain, anger, and betrayal. And one thing was clear, Mendeecees had to answer for this. Without saying another word, she stood up suddenly, almost toppling the chair. Tasha watched her closely, sensing the storm building inside her, and Yandy's eyes burned with fury to get the truth straight from him. Stormed out of the cafe, she barely remembered getting back in her car, and she barely noticed the drive home. However, when she arrived at the house, she noticed Mendeecees pacing outside. He looked up, but the second her car door slammed shut, Yandy flinched, and she didn't even let him finish before she marched toward him. Yandy, listen, it's not what you think, not what I think. She interrupted him, whispering, I just sat across from the mother of your child. I just looked at DNA results. I just saw photos of you holding that baby. What part of this isn't what I think, Men's? Her hands were shaking as she pushed the folder against his chest. Now the man hesitated. His eyes darted to the documents in her hand. Looked down his clenched jaw and said, Say something. Yandy shouted, Anything mine, Southeast Finn. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with guilt, and his voice was barely above a whisper. I messed up, Yandy, he said, seeing that she had a whole damn child behind my back. Mendeecees, you didn't just mess up, he said, and she grabbed his hands as he reached for them. She shook her head and said, Please don't. I stood by you, I defended you. I built a whole life with you and you. She swallowed her voice, saying, You lied to me over and over again, Mendeecees, and exhaled shakily. I was afraid, unsure of how to tell you, and I didn't want to lose you. Yandy laughed bitterly, wiping away a tear, and guess what you just did? The weight of her words and the finality in her tone hit him like a ton of bricks as Yandy walked away from him. He had made a mistake before, but this time it was different. And this wasn't some old mistake coming back to haunt him. Her heart was racing, her mind spinning, and Ems called after her. But she didn't stop because she knew everything had changed at that moment. He hurried after her, grabbing her wrist just before she reached the front door. And for the first time, he felt as though he might truly lose Yandy forever. His voice cracked in desperation. Don't walk away like this. She yanked her arm free, spinning around with fire in her eyes. How else am I supposed to leave Mendeecees with it? I'm grateful to C for making me look bad in front of the entire world. I swear I never wanted it to come out this way. Yandy laughed bitterly. Oh, that's the problem that you got caught. She shook her head and smirked, her eyes burning. Tell me the truth right now. How long were you going to keep this from me? Mendeecees hesitated, thinking that 1 second of silence was too much. He ran a hand down his face and exhaled sharply, and I was afraid, Yandy. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't want to hurt you. Yan's voice shook with rage. You already betrayed our family and our children, and now there's a whole baby involved in this mess. Means. Scoff stepped back as if she couldn't even stand to be near him, which is what I thought, she whispered. She pressed, I don't know the words. Maybe Yandy. Stomach twist, you don't know, and stepped closer, her voice lowering to a whisper. You really believe you could just act like this baby didn't exist? That Tasha wouldn't one day expose you, and that you were going to let me know like this? Mendeecees ran a hand over his head, breathing irregularly, but every time I tried to stop Yandy, she held up a hand and interrupted. I can't stand this any longer. She turned and went inside, slamming the door behind her. Mendeecees stood there for a while, staring at the closed door, before finally letting out a deep sigh. However, Yandy wasn't by herself inside the house. She hardly made it to the living room. Before she saw Judy's mother standing there with her arms crossed, she asked, You want to tell me what the hell is going on? Yandy swallowed hard, the lump in her throat getting bigger by the second. Did you know that her voice was barely above a whisper? Judy scowled. Yandy then let out a shaky breath, saying, Your son has a whole baby with another woman. Judy's face dropped when she heard me say that. She crossed her arms and said, Tasha did a DNA test. It's his, and he's been hiding it from me. Judy turned to face the front door, her face twisted with rage, and before Yandy could stop her, she flung it open, saying, Mindy, get in here now. Many of the men who had been pacing outside turned slowly and paused before returning inside. The tension in the room was oppressive. You have something to tell me, son, Judy. Her voice was dangerously calm. DC sighed deeply, Ma, don't mom me, and snapped, You better tell me why the hell I'm hearing about a secret grandbaby from Yandy instead of my own son Means. Clenched, oh so tightly, but with nothing to say, Judy folded her arms. So I'm assuming it's not what it looks like you were afraid. She laughed harshly. So you better start talking before I drag the truth out of you myself, Mink said. It's true that Judy flinched for a second, and then the room fell silent. And then Judy's hand struck the side of M's head, causing Yandy's eyes to broaden. Judy must have gone crazy because you truly believed that you could lie to your own wife and family. What about that innocent child who didn't ask to be born into this mess? How dare you MCs hold the side of his face looking so defeated? I'm sorry, he muttered, and Judy shook her head in disgust. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to fix this. You broke this family, Mindy, she said, and I don't know. Judy sighed and turned to Yandy, saying, I know you're hurt, but I don't want to hear it. Yandy cut her off. Not right now. She left Mendeecees standing there like a broken man, and when his phone buzzed, it was Tasha and the rest of the group. If you can put it back together, I'm looking at Yandy, and his eyes are begging, please, baby, just know. His blood ran cold when he read the message. You won't claim your son. Maybe the world should know the truth. I'm going live in an hour, men. I hope you're ready. His hand trembled as he read the words. My worst nightmare is coming true, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. The screen faded to black, conveying the tension that Wiener's men's world is collapsing and that he no longer has control over the truth. When the world learns about this super baby, will Tasha truly go live and reveal everything? Will Yandy ever forgive him? How will Judy respond? This drama is far from over, and we want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Yandy should give Ems another chance? Is this betrayal too great to repair? What about Tasha? Do we have the right to reveal everything? Blasts like this, leave your comments below and make sure to press the subscribe button and enable notifications if you don't want to miss the next stunning development in this scandal that is developing. Remember, this story is only getting started.